I call to order Whittier City Council special meeting Tuesday, August 7th. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Victor Shen.
Here.
Monty Irvin.
Here.
Dave Pinkish.
Here.
Deborah Hicks. Here. Dave Dixon.
Here.
Peter Denmark is absent. And Dan Blair.
Here. Ask for a motion for approval of tonight's agenda.
Move to adopt agenda for special meeting August 7th, 2018.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Unanimous consent? Motion passes.
Citizens' comments on agenda items not scheduled for public hearing.
Sorry, can we go back? I think we needed to amend the agenda. Yeah. This came to me today. What I handed out to you guys earlier. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. Yes, Mayor and Council, this is a contract for police dispatch services to be provided for the city of Whittier, from the city of Cordova. And if Chief Russell would like to come up and speak to this, but it's basically, we're looking at a multi-year contract. The first year will be prorated from 8/6/18 to 12/31/18, as depicted on this document and the provisions. The amount prorated is $8,333. The next full year would be $25,000, and the subsequent years would also be $25,000, which, considering the cost of dispatch, health...
Jim, let's go ahead and adopt the, amend the agenda, and then we'll bring this in. The maker of the motion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, since we're doing that, do we want to, because we have no other subject matter, move executive session to the end?
Yeah, bring it before the executive session, that's fine.
All right. So we're going to amend the agenda to reflect,
5A.
well, it'd be new business, basically. If we move executive session number 7 to number 12A, and then include new business, the contract for special services under new business.
I think there should be public notice for this contract for special services. It says the contract is effective August 6, 2018.
Well, that can be in discussion.
Okay.
So,
well, I mean,
I'm making the motion to amend the agenda tonight's meeting to include the contract for special service under 9A and move 7, the executive session, to 12A. I'll second that.
Any discussion?
No.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and...
yes, there is. This contract is effective August 6, 2018. There's been no public notice for this contract for special services.
Monty, let's bring it on the agenda, and then we'll tear it apart when we get it.
I thought we were. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, calling for a vote to amend the agenda, to move the contract to new business and to move executive session to 12A, correct? All right. Calling for a vote, Dave Pinkish,
Yes.
Dave Dickinson,
Yes.
Victor Shen,
Yes.
Deborah Hicks, yes, Monty Irvin,
Yes.
and Dan Blair.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I'd ask for a motion to consider this contract. What was the line item on that?
It was number 9.
Oh, it's under new business?
Yes.
Okay.
We have nothing under unfinished business, so we can go right to new business.
So ask for a motion for the item added to new business.
I would say make a motion, and then we'll deal with it in discussion. So I move to approve the contract for special services dated August 6th, 2018 for Whittier Department of Public Safety, which authorizes dispatch services between the city of Whittier and the city of Cordova.
I'll
I'll second.
Discussion.
Again, has this been, I'm sorry, has this been published, public notice?
It has not been published. Let's let the chief introduce this thing, and then your concerns are very valid, Monty. I think what we're going to find out is this is a very unique service.
Council, I'd like to introduce to you this request for Council for Special Services. It's coming from our police department to another government agency, to the Cordova Police Department, to enter into a special contract so that we can have dispatch services through them. I'd like to give you a little bit of justification for this request, a little bit of a background of the research that went into it, and finally just a recommendation. A little bit of history. Currently, right now, if there's a call for service to the Whittier Police Department and you dial our number, that number is being forwarded to the cell phone being carried by the officer. If that officer is not doing anything, he picks up the phone, says hello, takes the call for service, and makes the appropriate dispatch. He's going to answer that phone if he's on a traffic stop, if he's investigating an accident, if he is on a domestic disturbance, if he is doing something else. He's actually having to come to a stop to answer everything, and if he can handle it, great, but otherwise, if he has to call out the fire or the ambulance or some other request for special services, again, he stops what he's doing, makes the notification, gets the agencies rolling, and then provides subsequent follow-up to that second call. And if there's a third call, and if there's a fourth call, he has to do all of that, day or night. That call is always going to be answered, unless he's not in cell service. If he's inside the tunnel, if he's on the side of Bear Valley, then it's going to go to a voicemail, and he'll get the voicemail and follow up on that. If he is out on a traffic stop or he's doing something else and he needs to call for help, he has to get on the radio and hopefully somebody's on the other end of it. Or he's going to have to dial 911 and answer his own phone call. It's not the best of circumstances and what we've been having to deal with for decades. The level of service that we're providing right now to the communities of Whittier and Girdwood have expanded to the point that that's really not an acceptable and safe way to conduct our business anymore. That's the background. The research that went into this was to explore what other agencies have done by contracting it out. We only had the option of standing up one ourselves, putting up the infrastructure and manning it, or contracting it out. To that end, I contacted the Anchorage Police Department and see if they would be willing to help us. They would be willing, but they really don't have the capability of doing it right now for a lot of internal reasons. They're trying to upgrade their staffing and their equipment. The message that they're sending out is we need more support. And oh, by the way, we're taking on Whittier, wouldn't sell. Same way with Matcom. They would be willing to do it, but again, they just don't have the ability to provide it right now. Both of them said, come back in about 18 months to 24 months and we'll talk then. Contacted the Kenai Peninsula Borough, and they were willing, and they provide contract services for other agencies, but the cost was phenomenally high. They're willing to do it if we would pay for a full-time position, a little over $100,000, just to get started by the time we're talking wages and benefits. The technology is there for a regional dispatch center, and that includes Cordova. So when I contacted them, I learned that they have provided this similar service for Yakutat and for other small agencies. They have a 24-hour dispatch center able to handle all incoming calls, and they provide dispatch. Furthermore, they're recognized through the FBI, through their Criminal Justice Information Sharing Network, and the NCIC as being an agency that would be able to receive and dispatch or disseminate information to the Whittier Police Department if we enter into an FBI kind of an agreement with them. Easy breezy, done, no problem, we can do that. We become the holder or the owners of the record, and they become the holders, meaning that anytime that we generate something, they can enter it on our behalf. If we need information, they can disseminate it from them to us on behalf, and everything is above board. This is the price they wanted for it. phenomenally good deal for us to be able to get this level of service 24/7, 365, and they would be able to answer our calls, answer our 911, and they would be able to dispatch for police, fire, and ambulance for this kind of price. And let's get in the weeds. What does that look like? Once this contract is signed, and we signed a couple of other paperworks for radio talk share grouping and other things like that, all we do is route our calls to them. The person who makes the call to 911 or to call our business line would never know that it was being answered in Cordova, or it was answered in Fairbanks, or in Anchorage, or any place else like that. They wouldn't say Cordova Police Department. They'd answer 911. If it rings on our line, they would answer Whittier Department of Public Safety. So the phones that are now going to the officer's pocket would just be routed to Cordova. They get the information and relay it accordingly. One thing that I do like about this particular thing is it's a government-to-government relationship. We already share information and intelligence back and forth. Cordova is very much like a sister city in that regard. It's not going to be problematic to route our 911 calls there or to forward our phone calls there. It makes good sense. And I honestly can't see how we could get possibly a better deal. And the other good thing about this kind of a contract is that we've only got 4 months, remainder of the year. It's been prorated that. July 1, then the full price comes in, we pay for that, and we can tie it in for the net all the way to the end of 2020. It gives us plenty of breathing room, and the effect would be immediate as far as the relief that the officers would be receiving. They'd be able to go to sleep at night and have to not answer that administrative call that comes in. And when they're out in the field, they would be able to radio their location, what they were doing, and have that be monitored by someone that's sitting right there. So if they do call for assistance, that they would be able to get the help that they need right away. So that's a little bit of the history behind the contract, the work that was done to bring it to this point. This is receiving the full support of the chief in Cordova, and also that their city manager over there as well.
So we have a dispatch position in our police department now, right? And so this would be in lieu of that, and it's higher than the 25,000.
There is funding. Correct, sir. There is funding in the personnel costs of the police department that for a position not currently filled. I don't remember her name. Julia? Yeah. That position has not been filled, and so that's where this money would come from.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
This includes Girdwood, is that correct?
It would provide the entire service
So my
area. That would
question
provide-
is, what's the population of Cordova and Yakutat, and what's the population of Whittier and Girdwood?
I do not know the population numbers on that.
It almost seems like we could do this and bill them.
In order to bill that, and that certainly is an option, but in order to do that, we'd have to stand up a dispatch center, and you're looking at a minimum of 3 up to 5 additional dispatchers to take that, and then we don't have the radio infrastructure in order to support it as well.
The radio infrastructure is the thing that
And also the manning.
yeah, right, no, I get the manning part of it too.
And the radios that we're talking about right now, we're part of the Alaska Land Mobile Radio Network, meaning that we can talk anywhere in the state, or actually in the country, if we become part of a talk group. Our handheld radios, we're able to talk anywhere in Whittier, in Girdwood, on the Kenai Peninsula, or anywhere else in the state where we're part of that. So we have that capability. We don't have a base radio set up. We have radios in our cars and we have radios in our hands, but we don't have a base radio set up downstairs. So if we were going to set up a dispatch center, that person would have to have a base radio. They would have to have their own computer terminal. It would have to be manned 24/7, and we don't have that infrastructure in place.
So they man, Cordova mans it 24 hours a day.
Yes, they do. They have designated dispatchers.
Okay, thank you.
Item 2A says the city of Whittier will install and operate an automated telephone answering system consisting of electronic answering machines with recorded message capability. And that's written as if we didn't already have that, but we do have that, right?
We do have that, yes.
Yeah.
That's one of the conditions that they require, so that a regular routine call for service, if it doesn't require emergency response or an after-hours response, they have the ability to leave a message. Most of the dispatch centers around the country right now, especially Alaska, if you call, you're given the option of leaving a regular message for routine administrative response rather than urgent. That's why when you call them up, they say, if this is an emergency, hang up and dial 911. If not, leave a message for...
I do have a question. With the fire and EMS side, since they're volunteer, how will that work for the volunteers? Is it...
We would provide them a list of all on-duty officers and our volunteers. In the event that they needed to dispatch the EMS or the fire, there would be the initial contact, and then there would be a list of volunteers that they would either call directly or by text. So rather than it's the same thing that the officer is trying to do now, or the medic is doing as he's going to the call. The difference is it would be outsourced to a dispatch center.
So another question. Are they actually putting an additional person on to cover this if this happens?
Yes. Cordova is partially funded through a jail contract. They are one of the 15 community jails in the state. DOC, in their infinite wisdom of overutilizing and underfunding contracts, cut back. And that cost them a dispatcher position. And the chief right now is undertaking these kinds of efforts to replace it. When I talked to him today, one of the dispatchers that they had let go has returned to Cordova and is looking for employment. This is going to go a significant way to funding that position that they had lost.
And then one last question. Why today, why not the regular scheduled meeting so the council could at least have time to review this? In other words, why is it so important to get it done today versus having it when we'd have time? At a normal meeting, we get stuff 5 days ahead of time, can read it. We're trying to read it as you're talking right now, so we're being asked to approve something that we haven't even read. That's my concern.
My understanding of this kind of special services contract, especially when it's going to government entities, is that it doesn't necessarily require a public comment. I'm not adverse to public comment or anything else like that. I anticipate that all public comment that this is a very good deal.
That's not my concern. Why is it important to have? Is it important to approve it today versus August 20th or 21st? That's my question.
My understanding of our staff and the police staff is that we're a little bit shorthanded. So by entering into this contract, it allows a few more hours of rest.
It certainly does provide for a service that is missing right now. And we're not, with the reduction in services, we're going to be very limited in our ability to provide the second officer or to provide them the coverage. Right now, we're burning a lot of overtime, spending a lot of hours sleep. My primary motivation is not to frustrate the council or to circumvent the process, but to take care of the officers and provide them the coverage that they need, and to continue to deliver the level of service that communities of Whittier and Girdwood have requested and desire with the resources that we have available.
Who wrote up the contract?
The general provision has been modeled after the one that they provided us from Yakutat. This is based after theirs. The MOU, Memorandum of Agreement, is based on the Memorandum of Agreement that is currently being utilized by the Kenai Peninsula Borough in their agreement with the Park Service. Both have been vetted by their respective legal folks, And in my request for help in putting this together, both of them provide that. The contract is exactly patterned from Cordova's current or previous one with the Acatat. The only thing we did was change the dates, the names, and the amount. With a memorandum of agreement that is established between the Whittier Department of Public Safety and the Cordova Police Department to exchange confidential information is not included in this packet as a standard form that is used, and that would be included in that as well. But that only requires my signature and the chief's signature representing the agencies.
And then if we want to withdraw, it looks like we can, notice must be provided no later than June 1st of next year.
What that does is it provides you with plenty of wiggle room on both sides of the part to extricate yourself. A typical contract like this, especially my understanding is that by giving a 6-month notice, you're not waking up one morning and finding out you don't have dispatch services.
Go ahead.
Chief, could you give me a timeline of how this, or when this will be implemented?
If this was approved tonight, and if I was authorized to go ahead and to be signing on this, as were you, then we would submit signed copies to Cordova, and they would go through their process to sign it. We would begin the process of setting up the radio talk groups, and then forwarding the phone numbers. So my timeline is that if we were able to get this started, by the end of the week, we could have a significant step taken to make our capabilities of radio communication and phone dispatch services available as soon as they sign it. I'm holding off on bringing in Procom, which is a radio service provider that we utilize to program our radios to include the new codes. Right now, we've entered into an agreement with the tunnel so that we can be part of their Alamar radio frequency, which lets us talk more than just direct line of sight. And rather than bring Procom down and then do that and then bring Procom down to bring in Cordova, made the choice to hold off until we get all of this together and make only one service call, one provider. This has been, I've been working on it for a while, meeting with all of those other agencies to explore our possibilities. And so it isn't something that this just got started on Monday and brought to you on Tuesday. It's to the point now to where it can be brought to you in a workable form so that we can go forward and no needless energy is wasted or expectations raised about this particular service.
Okay,
He's looking on page 2 of 3, item number 4.
I've got a couple of things. I still don't like the idea of going doing this without going through our budget or public notice. I appreciate what you're doing and enhance 911 and all the other things that this thing can marry into, but I mean, we've done it without it for so long. I don't see why we have to go so far out of the normal to accomplish this.
If I may address that, I think that to say that we've been able to accomplish without a dispatch service is a fortunate thing. that if we've been able to get by where we're at, but it's been not without hiccups and not without frustration. When a call comes in to the police officer and he answers it, and he needs to dispatch the medics to a medical call, then he contacts the medic, and the medic gets up and he responds to his call, but he's going solo. And it's up to that officer to start making phone calls, or the medic to be making phone calls to get his volunteers here so that he isn't going by himself. Many times, due to a lack of volunteer response, the on-duty officer is the one that's going to be stopping what he's doing and going to be the driver or to be the second medic. So the reason that the appearance of being able to get by for so many years is not without great liability and exposure to everybody that's being involved, great personal commitment by the staff that are actually getting involved in doing this. And we can't do multiple things at once and do them all effectively. We're going to eventually drop the ball. We're going to eventually be grossly embarrassed at how skinny we are in providing this level of service right now. And if we are to have key people to walk away or to get tired and move on, then this is going to be falling flat. This is a level of a service that I think that we in Whittier deserve.
How are we going to divide this up with Girdwood? How much are they going to pay you this?
They're not going to be paying anything right now. This is being fully funded by us, and this is providing Whittier Department police officers and medics and EMS. We are not going to be dispatching for Girdwood Fire. They've already got that infrastructure. This is strictly for us, the police and fire here inside of Girdwood, and in Whittier, and the Whittier Police Department, as they fulfill their contract in Girdwood, they'll be able to get the information that they need over there. We'll be able to maintain contact with our officers when they're going into Anchorage, either on a prisoner transport, be able to maintain contact with our ambulance when they do their patient transports. So it's not a cost or a service that is going to be subsidized by our Girdwood contract. A little bit more information, we're negotiating a Girdwood contract that's coming up for renewal in 16 months. We can certainly factor in our cost towards that. They're going to be benefiting from it, and we could include that into our contract negotiations that are just beginning. But right now, it's fully funded by us. It would be fully funded by my budget.
This is actually going to be paid for by a budget line.
It's not going to require a budget addition, just moving funds from personnel into contract services.
I will just say that the concept, I think, is excellent. The whole switching to this, and as far as budget is concerned, we're probably looking at a third of the cost of hiring a dispatcher. So it's an extremely cost-effective and superior service. There's no question about that. But I'll just put administration on notice. Handing this, I've been through this before. Handing this stuff at a meeting and us expecting us to vote on it. 2 years ago, I said, if you do this to me, I'm going to vote no matter what. I might make an exception here, but just be aware. I mean, even if we would have got it earlier today, but all of you should know. And so the question I have, a legal question. I believe we're okay here, sole service contract, because no one can really provide what these people are providing. Okay.
Mr. Pincush. The delay in getting that to you is mine and mine own. As we were working out the details, it wasn't until we could put this all together that I could personally submit it and to get it to review. So this is on me.
it's not just on Greg. The decision to put it before you guys was actually mine, because I know how incredibly short-staffed we are. I know that every night that we don't have dispatch services is a night that really our officers could be in danger, the public could be in danger. So I thought, because of the nature of the beast, it was expedient to get it before you guys. I apologize. I'm just trying to keep our officers safe. Like, that was the motivation for doing what we did. I apologize.
If I may, just offer one bit more of anecdotal information. Yesterday, case in point, we were on a civil standby in Girdwood. We were helping folks demolish some property and evicting the squatters, right? And that should be an easy breezy kind of a thing. As the squatters were loading up their car, and the officers were standing nearby with a trunk up, he couldn't see the license plate. When it came back down and the license plate became visible, the officer ran it. It was a stolen vehicle. That information, I'm glad that he got the stolen vehicle and we were able to return it to Anchorage, but because we have only one TAC officer that has that access, we have to, by our agreement with the FBI and APSN, we have to be able to remove that vehicle as stolen from the records. The officer that does that was off duty. So we had to call the officer to come all the way back in, to come to here, and to remove that vehicle from stolen status so that the owner can get it out of impound. If we had this agreement in place, the Cordova would tell us that it was stolen. They would also then dispatch the record service to come pick it up, and then they would remove that record out of the system, all right there within minutes. And then they would be able to start our report on documenting all of that. That's the easy way to do it. The more difficult way is what I just described, and that was just yesterday. The week before, we recovered another stolen vehicle that had been a vehicle that was used in a vehicular assault in Anchorage, arrested somebody for an outstanding warrant, and recovered 2 juveniles that had run away, all on a single traffic stop. Now that is really not a bad day. But then when you have to call that same off-duty officer, that has to come all the way back in and to make all those entries in APSN, that's very frustrating in so many different ways. And as we become better at what we do, those incidences are only going to occur more frequently. We recently had a very high-profile drug case, and so where a significant seizure of drugs coming into our community were seized. The backstory that not everybody realizes is the literally hours and hours that were added onto that whole incident because we didn't have a dispatch service. The officer had to do all of that on his own, some of which was when he was not in cell service over on the other side. So I mean, it's when I appreciate what you're saying. We've been able to do it for decades, but this isn't the decades that we're reflecting back on. More and more things are happening, and this is very much of a significant step in the right direction to make us better able to deal with those circumstances.
I'd like to say one last thing. Thank you. I want to mention before the meeting about the Carter shirts. This is one of those little things that people don't see that is actually getting better in this now.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none.
We have a motion on the table. I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote. Dave Pinkish.
Yes.
Dave Dixon.
Yes.
Deborah Hicks.
Yes.
Victor Shen.
Yes.
Monty Irvin. Dan Blair.
Yes.
I was counting. Okay, that was correct.
So I forgot to mention there's one extra 2 on the last year of the third of the year 2020. So we're going to council discussion? Right, the executive session is going to be on item 12.
Correct. After item 12. After
Okay.
item 12.
Citizens discussion? Okay. I'd ask for a motion to bring us into executive session for both line items.
Move to go into executive session for discussion of the city manager candidates and disposal of P12 building because of matters that can tend to prejudice the reputation and character of a person on the city manager and could adversely affect the finances of the city on the P12 building.
I'll second.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to ask to be excused during what is now still on the first discussion of candidates during that period and come back for discussion during the building.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Ready?
Calling for a vote. Dave Pinkish.
Yes.
Dave Dixon.
Yes.
Monty Irvin. Deborah Hicks.
Yes.
Victor Shen.
Yes.
And Dan Blair.
Yes.
Motion passes. Hello, hello. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.